I am starting over the reading of the letter I wrote to the Attorney General's Office Criminal Division regarding medical fraud, psychiatric reprisal, and police corruption. Dear Mr. Grewal, Grewal, I am writing to report a serious matter that I experienced on December 10, 2018. Other New Jersey residents have reported similar stories when I shared my medical psychiatric reprisal kidnapping experience with them. They also shared their own experiences of medical and insurance fraud, conspiracy against rights, and police misconduct. I need your assistance to determine if there are additional violations of law pertaining to the above referenced and following issues. It would be greatly appreciated if you and your agency would perform a pattern and practice investigation of the Manalapan Police Department, Monmouth PESS, specifically an assessor named Tina Booth, the Monmouth EMS, Centrastate Medical, and with the medical billing institutions listed in this complaint and in the attachments. Since invoices for the services they ordered were first submitted to my Medicare Insurance, I believe the above referenced agencies, including the Manalapan Police Department, Chief of Police Michael Fountain and his Lieutenant Thomas Mantle, are also in violation of the Medicare False Claims Act. I also need your assistance in changing the falsified, contrived medical psychiatric diagnosis records and eliminating the myriad of statements. I need to change my camera here. Statement invoices billed for these fraudulent grab and nab practices so that it does not negatively impact my credit rating or reputation. My story is as follows. I am a 60-year-old divorced single woman and a 30-year Manalapan taxpayer and original homeowner. I hold both a BA, an MS, which is a master's in psychology. I'm a certified hypnotherapist, minister, a New Jersey notary public, and attained 2 human resources generalist certifications. I'm a Reiki master teacher in addition to having performed many years of community service. My one daughter is completing her PhD. In 2014, I began home renovations in preparation for selling my house. Some of those renovations continued through 2016. However, around that time, I started to notice yard and home vandalism and took necessary safety precautions, lock changes. After doing so, there were noticeable lock and door forcible pry entry marks. Items were stolen from the home. I reported this in 2017 to the Manalapan Police Department. See the attached letter to them requesting they correct the statements of fact that to this date have not been corrected. Yet it is evident in my response to their fabricated reports, they appear to have set up a scenario, a false flag, or have an agenda for discrediting me at that time. They stated in a public record police incident report, 2 reports verbatim, that I appeared, quote unquote, paranoid, and that my reportings were, quote, suspicious, unquote. This has no place in a public incident report. It's libelous and defamatory. They failed to state the facts, that there was a burglary, a theft of personal property, and vandalism. Those incident reports were never entered into the Manalapan Police Blotter, which means they never made it to the local newspaper. When I requested a copy of the entry into the Manalapan Police Blotter through Oprah, I was informed, quote, not found, unquote. Fast forward to 2018. There's much vandalism to my property and home, and I have documented proof posted online, presented to the police department, and witnessed by family and friends. Newly installed security cameras are tampered with from an external source on a regular basis. I have subsequently provided testimony about what appears to be a phenomenon called real estate mobbing to an investigative reporter, Romola D., Newsbreak 13, Part 1 and 2. On YouTube, and multiple interviews in 2018 and 2019, we discussed the recent December 10 medical fraud and the lawsuit filed by a Manalapan police officer, Hedden, Hedden, against the Manalapan Police Department, Manalapan Township, and the Chief of Police, copy attached. The ACLU also filed and won a lawsuit against the Manalapan Police Department, attached. We also discussed psychiatric reprisal sweeping the country. Reference is made to the Hedden lawsuit because many claims made in that lawsuit by the police officer are happening to me as well. It appears as if there is a pattern of misconduct used by the Manalapan Police Department Chief of Police to silence, discredit anyone who attempts to exert their rights, file a complaint, or attempt to make corrections. On the morning of December 10, 2018, I received a phone call from Lieutenant Mantle stating that they would like to drop off a property loss form after having received my recent email stating that vandalism and theft of property. Instead of calling police to my home, I was advised to type out what appeared to be the statements of facts so that it would not be distorted as they have been in the past. So I decided to do that. I was never provided a property loss form for any past incidences and considered it odd that I would be provided one now. Hours passed and there was a knock at the door. Police Officer Joyner, Joiner, and a female I later learned was Tina Booth from Monmouth PESS, which is a psychiatric screening service, was there. Please note that I asked Miss Booth for a business card, and she didn't have one. I asked her who she was, who she reported to, and she did not respond. She was not wearing any form of identification. She failed to provide identification when asked, and failed to provide her last name. She only stated that she was asked to visit by the Manalapan Police Department, which would have been either the decision-making of Lieutenant Mantle and or Chief of Police Michael Fountain. So she was asked to join a police officer by the Manalapan Police Department, the criminals at the Manalapan Police Department. I walked outside with the officer and Tina Booth to the tree that had been vandalized, then another tree close to the front door. During this time, it was odd that Tina Booth questioned me about my sleep habits. I utilized this opportunity to hand the officer a letter written to a painter, a floor installer, who failed to refund money for services that were not performed. Tina Booth took the report and my casual comments about my sleep habits and quote-unquote diagnosed me that I required a mental health assessment and that I had no choice but to go to the hospital emergency room for an evaluation. Now, I just want to let you know, folks, the hospital emergency room, when I got there, did not provide any sort of evaluation. They had no idea why I was there. So knowing this would not end well, I walked toward my front door. I walked inside and closed the door. Tina Booth placed her hands on the front door handle and pushed her way inside my house as I attempted to lock the door. Then I asked her to leave. She refused. I asked Tina Booth, what criteria did you utilize to determine that I required a mental health exam And of that criteria, what items did I meet that would lend to that decision? There was no answer. However, in the report she provided to Centrastate Medical, she claims that my judgment is poor because I employed a home contractor that scammed me. There are no notations with several diagnoses. Oh, I'm sorry. There are notations with several diagnosis codes. As an officer stood there, another police officer straddled my driveway. Then before I realized it, there were 3 police officers, a sergeant, and an EMS truck. And one officer had his hand on his gun. They refused to leave. Even after showing vandalism to furniture, it was discounted. I called a friend who listened in and asked them to leave, yelling to get out that they are trespassing. It was a recorded call. The police officer wore a body camera. My video surveillance documented that Tina Booth arrived in an SUV with another individual who also trespassed my property, smoking incessantly and extinguishing those cigarettes on my property. That individual, who maintained verbal contact with a police officer parked on my street, also harassed a UPS delivery person who was attempting to deliver a package. The police officer said I must go to the emergency room, and he asked, do I want to go voluntarily or involuntarily? I realized that if I stated involuntary, that he would handcuff me in my own home. In preparing to leave, Officer Joyner followed me throughout my house as I locked the house. He followed me to my bathroom. He attempted to grab my handbag and carry it off as I asked him to put it down. Officer Casella attempted to open the back slider door, and I asked him to not open that door. When we drove to the hospital, I informed the EMS worker that I was involuntary and that in filling out an incident report, I was discredited to prevent my filing a formal complaint. I learned that the EMS person works 18 hours straight without sleeping. Imagine that, folks. 18 hours of work without sleeping. And this guy is driving your ambulance? I was taken against my will in the EMS ambulance ordered in advance by the Manalapan Police Department at approximately 3 p.m. This was a setup, an agenda evidently concocted in 2017. Under duress, I was forced to remove my clothing and provide a urine and blood sample, also threat by police department and requirement by Centrastate, even though I refused to sign any admission forms. I learned that the urine sample was a drug test. However, I was not arrested. I was not convicted of a crime. I do not smoke, drink, or do drugs. I am a vegetarian leading a healthy lifestyle. Why was I given a drug test? I reported a crime at my house and was discredited, violated, kidnapped, falsely diagnosed, medically violated, and fraudulently billed. My personal belongings were confiscated and my phone was taken away. Tina Booth falsified notes in the, quote, mental health assessment evaluation provided to Centrastate Medical Hospital with a fake diagnosis. Centrastate Medical Hospital also falsified medical reports and notes by claiming to provide services that they failed to provide. Centrastate made claim in their medical report that I had no medical chips or devices, yet I was not scanned for any devices. They also failed to test for quote-unquote falls, yet documented that they did. An unknown psychiatrist signed a release even though I never admitted myself. And I never met the psychiatrist or provided that psychiatrist's name. Yet I was billed for having met with a doctor when I only met with a nurse. I have left 3 messages at the Monmouth PESS and to date have not received a call back. I also sent emails, U.S. postal mail, certified letters to the supervisors of Monmouth PESS and Centrastate, and neither called or responded, and both letters are attached. I had not eaten that day of December 10th, and I asked for something to eat, explaining that I'm a vegetarian. I was provided Cheerios and sugary Frosted Flakes cereal, graham crackers loaded with high fructose corn syrup and other sugars, black coffee, and orange juice. I remained held against my will until 8 p.m., until my 80-year-old mother and stepfather drove almost 3 hours from New York to drive me home. This is an embarrassment and mockery of the healthcare system and should not be tolerated. Since when do police have the right to haul off innocent people for filing incident reports? The Manalapan Police Department and Monmouth Medical and Centrastate have committed medical fraud in addition to violating my civil and human rights. I was also not provided a patient's bill of rights by the Monmouth Medical, Monmouth EMS, or Centrastate. And I provided a URL for that information. My mom not only spoke to Officer Casella, but offered validating information to the hospital, indicated in the Centrastate report that she witnessed the vandalism, and she hired a security consultant on my behalf who located a listening device in my home. I provided a copy of that report last year to the Manalapan Police Department, yet they failed to accurately report crimes on my property. One can only speculate they may be the perpetrators given their horrendous misconduct. Police confabulated a, quote, psychiatric, quote, label to compartmentalize me after having filed an incident report of vandalism and burglary in 2017. The connotation of appearing paranoid was a projection of the police chief's agenda. See the Hedden lawsuit. Centrastate Medical records state that Tina Booth was, quote, upset that I was released from the emergency room that night. Tina Booth trespassed my property and failed to identify herself. This attempt to tarnish my reputation and discredit me may harm my ability to work in my field as a psychologist. The Manalapan Police Department continues to violate HIPAA privacy rules by including a falsified medical diagnosis in a police incident report that is an open public record. Personal medical and/or psychiatric information has no place in a police incident report. In addition, the information is false, in fact, libelous and defamatory in an attempt to discredit me and to credit my testimony. I continue to receive invoices from December 10, 2018. I'm sorry, I have to plug in my phone here a second. For services, the amount of $3,164.62 that I did not agree to. It was not medically necessary. The services were not provided or falsified. They were designed to intimidate, harass, and silence my claims. This is medical and insurance fraud, defamation, and libel. The Manalapan Police Department are retaliating for having reported crimes, see the Hedden lawsuit, retaliating for attempting to correct incident reports, retaliation for exerting my rights, age and sex discrimination. If I were married and not living alone, this would not be happening. In addition, on December 31, 2018, New Year's Eve, a police officer, badge number 99, left a voice message at my home at 9:33 a.m. to discuss, quote-unquote, a matter. Within minutes, my doorbell rings, and I look outside from upstairs window and see a police car on my driveway. I did not answer the door, and it finally drove away. What was the purpose of that call? A visit? I'm a 30-year-old Manalapan Township taxpayer, and I have a right to live in my home without harassment, stalking, intimidation from local law enforcement. I also have a right to file an incident report and protect my property from harm. What I am seeking restitution, correction of medical records, removal of a false diagnosis, and penalize or fine the police department, Monmouth PESS, Tina Booth for fabricating a diagnosis, medical fraud, violating HIPAA by including personal and confidential medical information in a police report. And since the number of individuals who have viewed or touched those reports is unknown to me, the damages may be great. In researching the law, there are several that appear to have been violated. Please help me understand if there are other laws that may have been violated. Cody's Law. Many legislators and policymakers, including Congressman Stark, have argued that health care utilization and costs increase inappropriately when physicians are unable to reap financial profits from their referrals of health care services. If physicians cannot benefit financially from their referrals, so the argument goes, they will make fewer referrals that are medically unnecessary and motivated solely by profit. Number 2, False Claim Act, Medicare Incentive Reward Program. Another fraud consists of bills submitted to Medicare for services that are not medically necessary, such as unnecessary tests, imaging, or equipment, submitting charges for services that no one performs, and other fraudulent billing practices include coding issues. Some providers will bill Medicare for services at a higher level of care than a patient received. This violation can include charging a specialist fee without the patient consulting with a specialist, or charging for an MD when a nurse practitioner or physician assistant provided the services. Then, of course, there is 18 U.S. Code Section 1347, the healthcare fraud. Whoever knowingly or willfully executes or attempts to execute a scheme or artifice to defraud any healthcare benefit program, to obtain by means false or fraudulent pretenses, representations, or promises any of the money or property owned by or under the custody and control of any healthcare benefit program in connection with the delivery of or payment of healthcare benefits, items, or services shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years or both. If the violation results in serious bodily injury as defined in Section 1365 of this title, such person shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 20 years or both. With respect to violations of this section, a person need not have actual knowledge of the section or specific intent to commit a violation of this section. They have also violated HIPAA privacy rule. They violated 18 U.S. Code, Section 241, conspiracy against rights, acting under the color of law, is the misuse of power, possessed by virtue state law, and made possible only because the wrongdoer is clothed with the authority of the state law. See Thompson v. Zirkle, 2007, U.S. District Lexis, which is LexisNexis, 77654, ND, October 17, 2007. If two or more persons conspire to injure, oppress, threaten, or intimidate any person in any state, territory, commonwealth, possession, district in the free exercise of enjoyment of any right or privilege secured to him under the Constitution or laws of the United States, or because of him having so exercised the same, they shall be fined under this title or imprisoned for not more than 10 years or both. And if death results from the acts committed in violation of this section, or if such acts include kidnapping or an attempt to kidnap, aggravated sexual abuse or attempt to commit aggravated sexual abuse, attempt to kill, they shall be fined under this title or imprisoned for any term of years or for life or both, or may be sentenced to death. Then there's U.S. Code 242, deprivation of rights under the color of law. In summary, I am uncertain if there are other New Jersey state or federal laws that have been broken. However, I am requesting an investigation to be performed to make that determination. Thank you so much for taking the time to review this complaint, and I appreciate any assistance you may provide in these matters. If you require additional information in support of my claims, please do not hesitate to contact me. Thank you again. Best regards, Lorraine Valenti. Multiple attachments. List of supporting evidence as follows. Correct falsified medical records. Discharge invoice billings total of $3,164.62. Investigate police department history of complaints and lawsuits. Investigate Tina Booth and obtain her credentials. Complaints against the multiple agencies. The Hedden HEDDEN lawsuit. The ACLU lawsuit. Romola D interviews. For the record, folks, this was 61 pages. I provided a list of evidence supporting documents, a letter to the Western Monmouth EMS, a letter to the Western Monmouth EMS, a second letter, a letter to the Monmouth Medical Center, another letter to the Monmouth Medical Center, a certified mail to Douglas Hoffman, the Monmouth Medical Center, a letter to Centrastate regarding HIPAA, revocation and authorization to use my personal information. I sent another certified letter to Cheryl Craig, the Centrastate Medical Center. I sent a Central State Emergency Medicine letter. I sent an OPA request to the Department of Human Services. I requested a copy of the fabricated Manalapan Police incident report initiated by them, which was 5 pages. An outline, notes highlighting the Hedden versus Manalapan Township lawsuit versus Michael Fountain, Chief of Police. A copy of the news release, the ACLU of New Jersey filed a discrimination lawsuit against the Manalapan Police Department, and they received an award of $275,000 settlement. There was a copy of a letter to Lieutenant Mantle, the Manalapan Police Department, dated April 26, 2017, correcting the incident reports, 4 pages, which were never corrected. This is Lorraine, Alternative Homesteading. This is for documentation purposes only. And you can see that this letter coincides with the video posted of Tina Booth breaking into my house on December 10, 2018 with Officer Joyner, Joiner, Officer Casella, Sergeant Carey, at the command of Lieutenant Thomas Mantle, and Chief of Police then Michael Fountain. Your tax dollars are hard at work here, but these are criminals. They need to bloat their terrorist watch list. They wanted to collect my DNA so that they can traffic me. And no, I'm not going to shut up. These criminals need to be behind bars. This is Lorraine, Alternative Homesteading, signing off for now.